I have to admit, I'm not the biggest fan of traditional hot cross buns, but when it comes to the chocolate version, I love them. That combination of rich, decadent sweetness, deep, luscious chocolate flavor, and delicate, fluffy breadcrumb makes it the ultimate Easter treat. So this Easter, I am on a mission to create the ultimate chocolate hot cross bun recipe. I'm looking to create something that ticks all the boxes. Deep chocolate flavor, fluffy breadcrumb, and rich but not overly sweet. If you're just interested in the recipe, skip to the timestamp here. But if you're interested in the journey and some pro tips I learned along the way, keep watching. To start off, I want to see what's already out there, see what I like, and see where I can take my recipe to the next level. Now, while the options for places to get regular hot cross buns can be a little overwhelming, the market for chocolate hot cross buns is a little smaller. Personally, most of the chocolate hot cross buns I've eaten over the years have been supermarket ones, so that's what I sought out to try to create a baseline for a hot cross bun. In front of me here, I've got a Countdown and New World hot cross bun. The goal today isn't to rate these, but I want to try out each one and see what I like, dislike, what I think I can improve upon, and what I want to emulate in my final bun recipe. I've also got a homemade one here. I made this homemade one with a recipe by Marie Roffey on the Sugar Salt Magic blog. This will be my starting point for the homemade recipe. I'm going to go toast these up and then I'll get into the taste test. I have put a bit of butter on these, but otherwise they're in their original form, just toasted in a sandwich press for a couple minutes. Let's taste them and have a look. I'm going to start off with the Countdown one here. The smell from this is a little underwhelming. It just smells like bread. It doesn't necessarily smell like a hot cross bun or particularly chocolatey. This bun is super soft. You can see in the footage here, it just squishes down so far and immediately springs back. It's super soft. I kind of like that it's soft, but I almost feel like it's too soft. It sort of feels like it lacks structure and it sort of just disappears in your mouth. In terms of the bread, it doesn't taste particularly chocolatey. It does taste like chocolate, but it lacks that deep, luscious chocolate flavor that I'm looking for. The chocolate chips on the Countdown one are really good. They're sort of a medium size. They're marketed as Hershey's chocolate chips. I definitely like that they're a little bit bigger. They have really good flavor to them. But in terms of the actual bread, it's a little bit disappointing. Also the cross, it has like no flavor. This is fine, but a little bit underwhelming. I'm gonna move on to the New World one now. Immediately, this tastes way more chocolatey. More chocolate in the bread, way more chocolate chips in terms of quantity. I think the chocolate chips are a little bit smaller, but the quantity is just far more. This is definitely a lot closer to what I'm looking for. It's still quite soft, but it has more structure than the Countdown one. The Countdown one feels like it's so airy that there's like nothing to it. This one is airy and soft, but still has structure and has a really nice chocolate flavor. The cross is chocolate flavored on this one, but it still doesn't actually contribute much flavor-wise to the bun. That is something I'd like to tweak with my recipe. At the moment, I feel like these crosses are visual only and they've given no thought to how they taste. I quite like the sweetness level in here. I quite like the flavor. I think it could do it with a little more depth of flavor, maybe a bit of cinnamon or some other spices to really give it a bit of lift, but this is close to what I'm looking to achieve. New World Thornton, you've done well. I'm gonna go for the homemade one now. Immediately, this homemade one, it just has a better scent to it. I'm not sure why exactly. I do think we could do with a bit more chocolate flavor in this, and I definitely think the sweetness could be upped a little bit. This is definitely the most dense and least soft and airy of the bunch. Again, with this one, the cross doesn't contribute anything flavor-wise, it's visual only. One other thing is the cinnamon in this recipe, I think is a little bit overpowering. I think the cinnamon is good, but I think the quantity could be dialed back a little bit. Okay, so now I've got a starting point from which I can create my ultimate chocolate hot cross bun formula. I'm gonna try break this down into 4 components. The bread and texture of the bun itself, the bread flavor or how chocolatey the bread is, the type, size, and quantity of chocolate chips in the dough, and the cross. In terms of the bread and bun texture, I'm thinking of something in between the New World and homemade option. I want something that's super soft but still has enough structure. That Countdown one, it was super soft but it just didn't have enough structure to it. In terms of the bread flavor, I'm looking for something super chocolatey. I think chocolatier than any of the options I've tasted here. I want something a little bit sweet in between the New World one and the homemade one. In terms of the type, size, and quantity of the chocolate chips, I think the quantity in the New World and the homemade one was about right. In terms of size, I do like that larger size. I think those bursts of chocolate really provide contrast and deep flavor, and I think using a high quality chocolate is going to be really important here because I noticed that the chocolate chips actually contribute a lot of the chocolate flavor. So I think selecting something like a Whittaker's or Cadbury chocolate bar and then cutting that up could be the best option here. And finally, the cross. I think none of these had a cross that was particularly interesting. They all look good, but they taste like nothing. I think the cross is somewhere we can improve, add some flavor, and make it an interesting feature of the hot cross bun. Okay, with that out of the way, I've got some work to go do in the kitchen. I'll see you in a moment. Okay, so after making a few batches to dial in the perfect recipe, I've discovered 3 tips to help you make a truly perfect hot cross bun. Tip number 1, in the dough use egg yolk only. A huge shout out to the Chain Baker for their amazing video on how egg affects bread dough. I've linked that in the description. The gist of it is that using only egg yolk results in a significantly airier crumb compared to using the whole egg. Also, using yolk only helps create a crispier crust that contrasts nicely with the super soft and airy crumb. Tip 2 is to use a custard cross. I tried a couple of different cross recipes and my favorite by far is one from Erin Clarkson at Cloudy Kitchen. The custard cross adds so much more flavor and character to the final product, making the cross a feature of the bun from a flavor perspective rather than a tasteless aesthetic add-on. There's a chocolate version of the cross which I've linked below as well, but I personally prefer the flavor contrast of the vanilla cross with the chocolate bun. Finally, tip number 3, use high quality big chocolate chunks. In my testing, I found that most of the chocolate flavor in the bun comes from the chocolate chips themselves. Therefore, the best way to improve the chocolate flavor is to use more higher quality chocolate chunks. You can use whatever chocolate you like, but personally, I got the best results by chopping up Whittaker's 50% dark chocolate. If you're feeling lazy, I also found that dark chocolate buttons like these Pam's ones work pretty well. I'd recommend avoiding smaller chocolate chips as they don't provide the same punch as hand-cut chocolate chunks or the buttons. Now that we know how to take our chocolate hot cross buns to the next level, let's get into the ultimate chocolate hot cross bun recipe. The full recipe with all the measurements is in the description below. Start off by weighing 340 grams of milk and heating it on the pan or in the microwave until it's about 30 degrees Celsius. If you don't have a thermometer, just heat it until it feels lukewarm to the touch and err on the colder side if you're uncertain. Add the milk to a large mixing bowl. In a separate bowl, crack 2 eggs and carefully lift out the egg yolks like so. I find lifting the egg yolks out with your hands like this to be easier than the method where you pass the yolk between the shells. Add the yolks to the mixing bowl with the milk and then add 8 grams of yeast. Give this a quick mix with a fork until it's looking nice and combined. Put those leftover egg whites in the fridge as we'll be using them later. Then to our mixing bowl, we're going to add 520 grams of high grade flour, 40 grams of cocoa powder, 110 grams of white sugar, 55 grams of melted regular salted butter, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon powder, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla essence. If you've got a stand mixer, using the hook attachment, mix on low for about a minute or until the ingredients form a cohesive ball. Then turn the speed up to medium-high and mix for 5 to 6 minutes. No stand mixer? No problem. Work the dough with your hands in the bowl until it forms a cohesive mass, then plop it out on the counter, pop on a YouTube video, and get kneading for about 10 minutes. Whether you're kneading by hand or using a stand mixer, after you're finished kneading, tear off a small piece of dough and see if you can stretch it out thin enough that the dough appears translucent when held up to a light or window. This is our gluten window test and shows us that we've developed enough gluten in our dough. If the dough breaks apart before you're able to stretch it out thin enough, knead or mix it for another 2 minutes and then try again. Lightly oil your mixing bowl, then plop the dough in and cover. We're going to leave this to rise for about 1 hour. While we're waiting for the dough to rise, we've got a couple of things to do. First, chocolate. I'm going to use 230 grams of this Whittaker's 50% dark chocolate, which is slightly less than the entire block. First, I'm going to break it up into individual pieces, then I'm going to try cut each piece approximately into thirds. You don't have to get this perfect. Put these into a bowl and set aside. The second thing we're going to do is make the custard for our custard cross. Into a medium bowl, add 45 grams of sugar and 20 grams of corn flour. Whisk to combine, then add 1 whole egg, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. I'm using this Halala vanilla extract with seeds, but you can use vanilla bean paste or whatever you've got available. Whisk well to combine and then set aside. In a medium saucepan, weigh 200 grams of milk and place it on low to medium heat and swirl it every 15 seconds or so, until the milk looks like it's just about to simmer. At this point, take it off the heat and pour about half of the heated milk into the egg mixture we created earlier. You want to go quickly here and whisk quite aggressively until the egg mixture is nice and smooth. Once it's smooth, add the egg mixture back into the saucepan and continue whisking while the stove is on low to medium heat. Once the custard mixture is looking nice and thick, take it off the heat and add 20 grams of butter. Keep whisking until the butter is fully melted and incorporated into the custard. Leave the custard for a few minutes to cool off a bit, then add it to a piping bag if you've got one. If you don't have a piping bag, just put the custard inside a resealable sandwich bag and then place it in the fridge for later. 1 hour later, the dough should be nice and puffed up. Weigh out half the dough, which should be around 550 grams, and place it on a lightly floured surface. Then, using your hand, stretch out the dough until it makes a rectangle approximately 35 by 30 centimeters in size. Sprinkle 115 grams or around half of our chopped up chocolate over the dough, making sure it's sprinkled evenly and we get the chocolate right up to the edges of the dough. Then using your hands, roll up the dough into one long log. Using a bench scraper or a knife if you don't have one, cut the log in half and then cut each half into thirds. Place the dough balls into a baking dish lined with baking paper and then cover with oiled Glad wrap or damp towel. Repeat the same procedure with the other half of the dough and then set aside our 2 baking trays for another hour. Around 1 hour later, our buns are looking super nice and puffy. If yours aren't looking quite as large as these, leave them to proof for another half hour and then check again. Once our dough balls are looking ready to go, we're going to lightly whisk those egg whites we set aside earlier and brush them over our hot cross bun balls. Place the hot cross buns into a preheated 180 degree oven on fan bake. If your oven doesn't have a fan, go for 200 degrees. After 12 minutes, pull the buns from the oven. Now these aren't cooked just yet. We're going to get the custard we set aside in our bag earlier and carefully snip a small half-centimeter sized hole in the corner. Then we're going to pipe over our buns and create our custard crosses. Once that's done, return the buns for the oven and bake for another 8 minutes or so. Remove the buns when they're looking nice and deep brown. If you've got a thermometer, you can verify that the interior temperature of the buns is 85 degrees or higher. Transfer to a wire rack and cool. When you're ready to serve them, slice in half and lightly toast in a pan or on a sandwich press. Serve with butter. I highly recommend this Lewis Road butter, by the way, if you're feeling fancy. And here is our ultimate chocolate hot cross bun. That is amazing. It's got that delicious deep chocolate flavor from the Whittaker's chocolate chunks, a tasty airy crumb from that egg yolk only technique, and the vanilla custard cross just provides this amazing contrast of flavor and texture that really makes this bun unlike any other chocolate hot cross bun I've had before. I hope you guys have fun making these. What's your favorite non-traditional hot cross bun? Let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, ka kite anō, I hope you have a relaxing Easter, and I will see you next time.